will need to follow my voice as it leads you into a relaxed state of meditation.
Welcome back to the Hobby Grow podcast for season 2. I'm your host, Ben Owens, hobby grower and ghostwriter for the cannabis industry. As you know, each week we'll dive into my network of growers, hash makers, breeders, and mentors around the world to give you insight into their journeys as growers, plus information you can use to grow better weed and make better hash at home. Hit subscribe, roll something up, and let's get into it. This episode, we are joined by Australian cannabis advocate Jessica Peros of the Green Room HQ, a platform dedicated to shattering stereotypes and normalizing cannabis cultivation and consumption in the land down under. I asked Jessica to join me today to talk about her journey among cannabis growers, which I'll throw in a slight asterisk here. This episode, you will notice a little bit of a difference in how we phrase some of our questions and answers, and that's for the protection of Jessica as well as Australian growers as a whole. One thing that I learned in this process is that there is no statute of limitations for something like cannabis cultivation in Australia. So if you get on a podcast and you talk about certain things in an incriminating way, even if they were 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you still run the risk of having some issues. So you will notice that we are talking about Jessica's role as a hydro store owner and her role in the home grow community, but we are not going to explicitly dabble in anything that could incriminate her or her fellow growers. So with that said, we're going to be covering the current cannabis climate in Australia, the fight for legacy in the face of legal and medical and what that looks like, and then as well as her experiences with the international cannabis community and her advice to other hobbyists around the world. So really excited for this one. Let's dive in. So how are things going over there on the other side of the world?
Yeah, really good. It's just a hot Australian day here. Very hot, very humid.
Yeah.
Yeah, been a lot of rain. The outdoor growers are just like, reeling with another very humid season, which isn't being kind to them.
Oh yeah, no, I can imagine. I didn't even realize or think about like climate wise how those kinds of things, like you're in the reverse of what we're going through basically right now.
Sure. Yeah, we are just past peak summer.
Okay.
But the seasons here in Australia, if you are a grower, you realize that you kind of have to pivot and adapt. We hopefully will have some more temperate, milder conditions coming through. But yeah, bushfires, lots of rain, high humidity. We're such a large country as well. So depending on where you're at there can be some challenges for sure, for the outdoor guys at least.
Yeah. How long is the season? Do you have a relatively long season?
Yeah, so other spaces can kind of grow a little bit longer or have different time frames. I'm in the temperate zone, like let's say Sydney, halfway through from the top to the bottom. We usually go from about September to May.
Okay.
Those a little bit further up have a bit of a longer season as they get closer to the equator.
Yeah.
It can get very cold. Like we had I think snow only about 2 months ago in the southern parts of Australia, down in Tasmania, which is wild for Australia. So
oh wow. Yeah, I can imagine that being a surprise as an outdoor grower.
Yeah, definitely. To be expected as you get further down south, but not snow in like December, January. That's pretty wild. So they've got their own challenges depending on where you reside.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, like even I talk about like Hawaii and the different microclimates that like exist just even on an island. So you're a large island.
Yeah, especially because we have on the East Coast, at least, that's where I'm more familiar with. The West Coast is a little bit different. It's more desert, arid, and flat land, but we have a very large kind of coastal band here on the East Coast, and then the mountain ranges kind of trap that humid sea air, storms, thunderstorms, and then as you get over the ranges, it kind of peters out a little bit. So yeah, depending on where you sit with your microclimate and whether you're indoor or outdoor, it all has its challenges.
Is there a lot of outdoor cultivation, or like would you say pretty equal, or do a lot more people grow outdoors?
No, a lot more people grow indoors
Okay.
just due to the illicit nature of cultivating your own. Guerrilla outdoor is embedded in Australian, cannabis history and cultivation. Um, we are quite a large country, but it also has its downfalls that, in agricultural region, we have a lot of, it can be easy to spot,
Yeah.
let's say. Yeah, we don't
Stands
have
out.
like mountainous ranges that we can kind of like hide many guerrilla grows, although that is,
Yeah.
spotted here and there. But I would say mostly indoor cultivation here in Australia.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit so that people listening kind of know who you are and how you got your story or your start in this space. So, within your own comfort level, like if you want to start with your first exposure to cannabis or your first exposure with consumption or your first exposure to cultivation, and then work us through kind of from that point to now and those sort of pivotal moments that have brought you to where you are currently.
Yeah, sure. So I guess my first interaction with cannabis was around 14, 15, so quite young. Um, that's quite common here in Australia. There is a large drinking culture that's, somewhat socially accepted for younger teens. So that's can be usually the predominant kind of entry into substances. But for me, cannabis aligned really quickly. Like it worked really well. I knew that she was going to be my love for a very long time. It certainly started with, smoking bongs made out of, plastic orange juice bottles and stolen hose from the neighbor and a tin foil cone piece. Like that nowadays, I do say to the young ones, you've certainly leveled up. There's so
Yes.
much more available.
Oh my God,
Um,
it's so easy.
yeah, to be inducted, like straight away, you can have beautiful functional glass arts and puffcos, and the art of rolling is so different now. But so early on, and then as I kind of finished high school, did a bit of travel. Cannabis was always, you always find your community no matter where you go. It was really nice to see cannabis consumption outside of Australia. We do live in it's illicit, it's illegal for us to cultivate, consume, possess. We do
Okay.
now have a medical model since 2016, so it's a little bit different in the last 10 years. But coming back home and just realizing the freedom of, adult use and being able to consume and cultivate your own, I came back and worked in a store here in Australia called Happy High Herbs. I
Okay.
don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but essentially it's kind of like a head shop. You can buy all your accessories, paraphernalia, but they also deal with plant medicines, with herbal highs, and
Okay.
then alternative communities, fire twirling, all the fun things that kind of build a cannabis community. And while I wasn't directly, sourcing and providing cannabis to people, we were having those conversations, and then, outside creating our network. And that was in far north Queensland,
Okay.
which where I'm at here is, more than 3,000 kilometers north. It's a very transient micro community. You are up in the kind of tropical forest, and a lot of indoor cultivation. It's very difficult to grow outdoors with those high humids and cyclones, and, just not being able to hide in plain sight, I guess, like you can in other spaces.
Yeah.
Um, so being in that space as a young woman really opened my eyes to so many different cannabis consumers, growers, old heads, like new people coming on board. And I just found that my affinity and my purpose for connecting people with the plant and plant medicines in general was growing day by day. So once I finished up there, I was meant to go over to Nepal and India. I wanted to check out some land races, go do some volunteer work. And unfortunately, there was a pretty serious earthquake over there. I was very lucky that I wasn't there at the time. So I decided to stay home for a little bit. And that's when I met my now husband, who was running hydro stores here on the East Coast. I
Okay.
dabbled in a little bit of outdoor grow previously, but knew the indoor growers up north, but hadn't had much exposure to large indoor cultivation or just multiple different styles. And nothing like being in a hydro store to
Well, and that was
to
my question was like from an inconspicuous level, you can't have like a, 750-watt LED dropped off on your front doorstep.
yeah. So it was, I think I was about 25 at the time. We were having our first baby, and we just thought we really want to do this ourselves. He was working for, owners of stores that didn't really care about the growers, wasn't 10 toes deep with the community. They just wanted to, buy cars and boats and, lack on getting the growers what they needed and investing in the store. And as you know, if you're the middle person, that's really frustrating
Yeah.
to not be able to service your community and growers the way you see fit and the way it should be. So yeah, we embarked on a journey of opening our own store with a very minimal budget, but took a few clients with us. They wanted to follow, and in 2017, or maybe the end of 2016, is when we officially opened and have spent 9 years in the same spot with the community running our hydroponic and organic gardening store. And that was just phenomenal. It was one of the most purposeful and value-led service roles, I feel like it was a service to our community that we were able to undertake. And we had 2 little kids in the end, and it was a family-friendly store. And, we'd have chalk and kids' toys, and we'd, have customers on a Saturday afternoon just come listen to some music and hang out and interact with one another, because here in Australia, due to its illegality, there is very few places you can talk about, your love for cannabis or
And I
your
was
love
going to
for
ask, like, culturally, opening up a hydro shop, community catering to this community, like, how was that received? Like, was it an easy one, well received endeavor? Or?
Well received, certainly. We're still quite light on the amount of hydroponic stores available in Australia. I think up until this date, just what's Google listed, there's about 200.
Okay.
So that's quite a small amount, facilitating a really large community in a really large area. So for us, there had been an old school grow store that had been here for 30 years, and he was resistant to the new changes that were coming along 10 years ago. So we thought this is the right time to bring the next gen through and bring a different vibe to the hydro stores that have been in Australia. Won't say that all of them were kind of rough and tumble. Everyone thought they were kind of like, organized crime ran, which they have been for sure. And we just came through with a breath of fresh air and a different outlook on where we wanted to see the future to go. So yeah, we did 10 years, or almost 10 years in the hydro store. And then in my last couple of years there, I reached out to a medicinal cannabis clinic here in our local area.
Okay.
And I'm happy to say that, in the hydro store, I was essentially helping the community understand CBD.
Yeah.
Everyone knew what THC was. That was fine. But once we start kind of getting into those other minor cannabinoids, major cannabinoids, how they can be useful, where their place is as well, I really enjoy being able to just broaden the perspective and knowledge that most old school growers and new school consumers as well didn't quite have yet. So I then kind of wore two hats. I was in the hydro store 5 days a week or 5 days a week. And then I was in the medicinal cannabis side of things a couple of days a week. So being able to be in the front line with the patients after they'd seen doctor and come through the legal medical pathway that we have available here in Australia, it can be really overwhelming for most people. It's a lot of information to intake. There's quite a few products that they get loaded up with. And whilst, the doctor does the best they can to answer all the questions and, make sure that the patient goes off feeling confident in what they're about to embark on. I was very blessed to have a role where they were then somewhat handed over to me to kind of go through doctor's notes, and this is what he wants you to do, and this is why he's prescribed you this particular balanced oil or, indica flower or whatever it may be, whatever formulation or format. And that was also one of the most beautiful, heartwarming moments that I could have, because I was so used to people walking into a hydro store, like they kind of know what they're after, they know what they want to do. But my clinic I worked in was a sleep specialty clinic, to be fair. So a lot of people were just going there with sleep issues, and then that, ticks down into, insomnia, pain, PTSD, mood disorders, it's a whole mixing pot of things. So a lot of stigma and judgment still is prevalent in Australia as well. So being able to have that conversation and that experience with patients and dismantle the stigma, just one conversation at a time. And I just felt like I was really doing the work to free our plant. And then, I also got to sit in meetings and deals with some of the biggest cannabis brands in Australia and over the world, and work out what should be on the formulation for doctor to prescribe, and why certain cultivars with, specific or unique profiles are important, and how the culture is something to be respected here and integrated, our knowledge and our lived experience. And that then just put me in rooms with people I probably never would have been able to get into just being on the hydro shop floor, meeting scientists and breeders and doctors and other brands and people around the world that, are in this Australian medical market and that want to pursue and see a really robust, structured, but progressive market moving forward. So then where we are now is that my husband and I sold our store at the end of last year. We had a 10-year plan and we made it 9 years.
Hey, that works. That's
yeah.
admirable in this space.
Yeah. Husband's even longer. He's like 16 years.
Oh, wow.
But in our store, we're very blessed. And he's still there now. The new owners took over, but he's still running ops there for them. You can't just, get up and leave your growers and be
Right. Need a little bit of a transition and a handoff.
Sure. And then I was able to essentially take the year off, let's say, like, operational day-to-day, being on the floor, running the website and all of that. And I left clinic because I could just see this huge gap between the two worlds here in Australia, the legal medical market and the home grower, advocate, consumer. And having a very heavy grow background, I was able to have beautiful relationships with some of our licensed cultivators and our licensed importers as well, and dive into the world of quality controlling, seeing different cultivars, visiting the licensed farms that we have here on the East Coast. And I don't know, a bit selfish, but I was like, I want to see this, so everyone else wants to see it too.
Yeah.
And they did, because it's something for the most part that, it's kind of kept behind lock and key. It's very blocked to the general public. Seeing what happens in these indoor cultivations, we have a lot of regulation, a lot of rules here. But I found a way with the right aligned companies that were like, yeah, we want to show the people how this is done. And my biggest goal was to respect the growers behind the medicine, whether you're licensed or not. It's such a service to yourself and your community and the greater good of the plant. So if I could showcase both sides and get the interest of, black market growers being like, oh, hey, look, they're using under canopy, or look how they fertigate, or how many lights they got running. Like, just being able to get the breeders and the TC workers and the CEOs in front of me and just answer the questions that I had myself, and putting it out there to the world. And that's where I kind of sit now as a storyteller and bridging the gap between the two worlds, representing women in cannabis, which is a very small cohort here in Australia, and just pushing the narrative, trying to look for reform and breakdown of stigma and education, because at the moment we're in a very delicate time in our cannabis industry as a whole in Australia, and someone's got to have a voice. Someone needs to represent our people, because if I don't sit at a table, corporates will, and they will be making our decisions for us, not with us.
No, I mean, it's something that we've seen happen in market after market. I mean, here in the US, we have markets like Florida that are medical only, have explicit prohibition against cultivation and home cultivation, and have also prohibited people from taking photos and, having media in their grows and truly like showcasing what's behind the warehouse walls. So it's definitely needed. And I'm curious, as medical has rolled out, I've talked to a couple other growers in Australia, and Instagram is a wonderful tool for connecting growers.
It is.
There's so many different ways it could go, but from what I've seen is, the products on market are very sterile, medicinal, branded. There's no cartoons and fun words and, candy flavors, and it seems very, very medical, would you say, or clinical, maybe, perhaps. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I'd say that's very accurate for the most part. Obviously, there are always people out there that are going to push the boundaries a little bit. To be fair, it's been more the people importing flower and then having, pretty labels with bright colors and kind of, playing on that rec side of labeling.
Yeah.
Which, I'm kind of here for. At some point, we need to flex the boundaries. We don't want to break anything and put more attention on ourselves from regulatory bodies that are already trying to suppress and like get rid of concentrates and high THC flower, which is unfortunate. But yes, what keeps the doctors in the medical world feeling very safe is that hopefully there's some case studies or some type of clinical trial attached to this flower that has a very, easy, palatable name. Name's one thing. Some of the strain names have been interesting, like asking a doctor for cheetah piss and they just go, what? That's not medical. Or I know one in particular that my doctor just rolled his eyes at was the baggy small cereal milk that was available. And he just went, this is getting ridiculous. And I said, well, this is cannabis.
Yeah.
So we can't just, pick what we like and what we don't. These roots run a lot deeper. So, then being able to help them understand the background behind it. But for the most part, yes, it is seen to be, if you want to be a good player in the game and you want your doctors to go, all right, I'll prescribe that through the clinic, and then everyone's happy with their margins and volumes are ticking over, we do have to, wear a certain hat. It's a very delicate dance.
I can see that. And does that affect, like I imagine the import market is vastly different than the domestically produced market. As far as what's cultivated and what's sold, is there a lot of demand for import product? Are you seeing a lot more domestically grown product in the market? Like, is it Australian growers that are supplying Australian consumers?
I wish that was the case. Look, just for some like general top level stats, and I think this is more 2024 and 2025, like the data was released end of 2025. So we kind of were a bit delayed on our stats, but we're looking at, I think it was about 74 ton of import and we're looking at about 3% export, so our growers exporting, but they're also producing around 40 tonne for our market here.
Okay.
So some of the challenges around this is the high cost of production here in Australia.
Okay. Just electricity or
Electricity, labor as well.
importing supplies and products?
Yeah, for sure. All of it. Like we do have a quite robust kind of wholesale for equipment and supplies coming in, but as we all know across the world over the last 3 to 5 years, any growing equipment, goods, nutrients, lights, they've all gone up for sure. What's gone down is the price of cannabis and like what it costs. So it's this crazy juxtaposition at the moment. But our Australian cultivators are struggling.
Yeah.
They don't get any support from government bodies. They do get support. Like we do have a cultivator, quite a large one here in New South Wales, that was afforded some grants from our state government body.
Okay.
And that was to help them do some research, but to get exporting, not necessarily to help our
At
local
home.
market. In saying that, I think there's probably I think it was about 15 or 20 cultivators here in Australia. So the number is quite small. At the moment, they're not giving out any more licenses. So if you're in the game, I hope you're surviving type thing. But no one else is kind of being brought to the table. We're somewhat capped on our ODC volumes of what they will allow Australian to stockhold cannabis at.
Okay.
So then when you look at, there's 74 tons of imports coming in at a much cheaper rate. Well, 80% of those imports, so just over 60 tonne of that is from Canada.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we have everything from bottom of the barrel floor buds that have been swept into a jar, I swear, up to the most premium phenotypes, craft cultivators at beautiful price points as well. So what has happened, I believe, is that we've had a vertically integrated model of medical prescribing arise here, which happens all over the place for sure in other medical and even other legal spaces. But when doctors are somewhat financially involved in the clinic and in the pharmacist who then dispenses the medicine, they're looking, yes, for consistency, but it's been very patient demanded that, $99 for 15 grams becomes the norm. And if you want to get in that top tier category, well, then you've got to pay for it. So being the world's biggest medical market at the moment, the price point and the influx of Canadian flower has certainly affected our licensed cultivators here in Australia, where they're just trying to, they can't even match it, to be fair. It's just that you have to want to either find a doctor that aligns with wanting beautiful, locally cultivated product that's, supporting our Australian industry. We have some really great outdoor and hybrid greenhouse grown flower here. They're doing their own pheno hunting as well, which is amazing. But that's 3 or 4 of them. So whilst I am a champion for Australian cultivators and I want to see them win, I understand the difficult position that they are in. With no government help, if anything, our medical regulatory bodies are pressuring the whole industry, which obviously affects them even more when they're already under the pump.
How does the quality compare? I mean, is there a noticeable difference in locally grown versus these imports, or is it about par?
Yeah, look, some might disagree with me. It's definitely improved over the last 5 years, definitely. I think when, they first ran when the gun went and they ran the sprint, there was very few selections. So they were kind of getting away with maybe extremely large scale cultivations, mids, as we would call it here.
Yeah, corporate.
It's kind of laughy flower as well. Not great genetics. Absolutely dried to a moisture point of being way under what it should be, so it crumbles in your hand. But now the cultivators are definitely leveling up, and they're expanding into like post-production. So we see like some hash coming through, and different formats. The quality of flower is definitely improving. We have one really large cultivator here who has just finished a 2.5 year pheno hunt and has it in production, and that's just brought such a fresh and new exciting product to the market that wasn't available there. So it's improving. They need more support.
Yeah, well, and you touched on it lightly, but my understanding from seed companies that I've worked with is it's very hard to get seeds into Australia. Your government is very good at keeping all the genetics from the rest of the world out.
Yeah. From a black market point of view to a legacy licensed spectrum, it's difficult. Even in the one territory here that we have where you are allowed to home grow, technically it's still illegal to source seeds or genetics. So it's just this really odd
so do they offer clones, or then how does that, I mean, with import you could bring in, I guess, clones? No.
No.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which does great for our local breeders, and seed makers, because obviously it's quite
control the market.
Yeah, for sure. And look, seeds make their way in no matter what. Sure. But it is very difficult. And we hope to see that change. And we have very strict biosecurity laws here in Australia. We're an island. We're very lucky that we can, for the most part, have that. But I know in the license realm in the last 2 years, having seeds and genetics brought in with HLVD in the license side of things has caused a bit of a stir and a bit of finger pointing at whose fault it is. And but we speak about on a black market that like that's something we don't test for, look for, and really only in the last maybe 5+ years have we really started noticing something like HLVD. So I sit here and go, it's probably been in Australia for decades. We just now kind of know what to look for to a degree, and there is some testing available for licensed cultivators. But seeds and genetics, there is no regulated easy pathway.
So from a home grow perspective, then, I mean, like, I'm lucky to live in a place where we can legally grow. But I've also lived in plenty of places where you can't, and it didn't stop the people who had the motivation and desire to do so and were able to keep their mouth shut. So with that in mind, is there, like, would you say that there's a pretty large home grow community, albeit, quieter and underground, or, okay, yeah, you would?
I'm allowed.
Yeah.
I'm quiet, for sure. Yeah, there's a huge underground home grow community. Like 10 times the legal market.
Oh, wow.
Here in Australia. Yeah, so the last kind of data I could pull, which was I think it was more 2023. We don't really have like tonnage consumption on black market because they don't necessarily haven't deciphered the two since 2023. But that was when the whole medical market, legal market here in Australia was just over 100 tons. Well, we were about 700.
Oh wow.
So now, obviously, home growers versus organized crime syndicates growing in the black market in large scale is a different thing. But
yeah, I was going to say, would you say it's like a lot of like people who are growing one light in their basement because it supplies their own personal need, or is there that desire to grow an 8 or a 12 or a 16 lighter in a hidden bunker?
Oh sure, all of it.
Okay.
Like, I mean, the spectrum of like seeing someone just wanting to chuck a little LED in their cupboard, which they still love to do, and have that battle.
Yeah.
Or, set up a one lighter, or maybe like some succession, like they'll veg in one and flower in the other and then have their harvest 10. I'd say that's if I had to generalize, that would be where we're at. But for sure, there is enough that are blowing up factories and underground basements. And we actually just had a very sophisticated black market grow be busted. And we were fortunate enough to have cameras there for it. And it was a whole, subterranean underground, like the lounge lifted up on hydraulics, and it was all underground.
Oh,
And there was
wow.
about 40 to 60 lights flowering in there, plus like veg rooms. And yeah, that is still quite common. And right now we're, 3/4 ish the way through outdoor season. So the outdoor guys are still pumping, like they're doing their best. And
Yeah.
but so this is always a fun time of year, especially as we get closer to May, when all the outdoor guys kind of pop their heads up and come through. And we talk about plant counts and the challenges that they've had. And but yeah, from as little as, a one light, a 4x4 tent, to just playing around, maybe with an autoflower. That seems to be the really common way to kind of wet their
Dip your
feet.
toes in.
Yeah. And all the way up to, some pretty large, like 500 plus lights, and they're getting it done. So
And so when you were running like the hydro store, were you supplying a lot of the clinical grows, or did they have sort of their own distribution and you were more of the home grow legacy market kind of
sure.
pathway?
Yeah, like 90% home grow, community based. Obviously, when I dipped my toes into the medical realm, and I'd already been chatting with some of the cultivators in the license world anyway, because hey, a grow's a grow, and when we
Right.
love our plant, we love talking washing and genetics and challenges. Like, that conversation sees no boundaries. But yeah, it's definitely majority community home grow. And then our licensed cultivators, like, just due to their buying power, like, there's a few I helped. We were like retrofitting some of their rooms, and I guess having like a pretty hefty breadth on like different nutrients and different lights. And when we talk that talk every day, they have questions they want answered. But I worked out really quickly. Essentially, they just take that information and then pivot to the wholesaler and go, hey, I want to buy like 300 of those. And as much as I would have loved that sale to come through, a hydro store channel, so that, we can support our hydroponic stores as well. And, we all get to eat. The reality is that a lot of our distributors and wholesalers that have serviced our black market for the last
however
30
long.
Quickly pivoted to going straight to farms, which, is fair enough. But small percentage there for the licensed cultivators, but majority for the community.
Well, I mean, it's cool to hear that the home grow community is resilient, which seems to be a common thread globally. But in spite of seemingly pretty strong repercussions if you were to get caught. So how does that work? Like, it is, like we joke about here in the US, if you keep your mouth shut and you keep your head down, like, risk is pretty low until a certain point. Like, you have 4 plants in a tent, like, and you're quiet, like, chances are you're not going to raise any eyebrows. If you start doing big things, maybe, hauling in pallets of soil, like, certain things raise flags. Are they actively looking for home growers? Is there a fight against the home grower? Is it sort of just not allowed, but that's a back burner?
Yeah, we have a really interesting dynamic depending on where you are in Australia. You're definitely right in saying if you kind of keep quiet, keep your head down, and you've got a small amount, which here in Australia would be considered like kind of 1 to 4 rooted plants.
Okay.
Once you get like 5, 25, 30 plants, you're looking at intent to supply.
Oh, wow.
Which is sad because, 1 to 4 plants, if I'm not succession growing and harvesting, like, that's not enough to facilitate my inhalable flower, or if I want to extract to make
or
oils
cloning to keep genetics around, or
that's why we don't see a lot of pheno hunting and a lot of breeding out here in Australia, just due to the enormity of plant. It doesn't have to be that large, but to get a good run under your belt and to get some stability, like, you want larger plant counts. And then when you're already running 8 lights and you've got a couple of pea drying, like, it's
like, if you're going to take the risk, you need the reward from it. You can't have half of your lights tied up in moms just sitting there for added risk and no return.
Exactly. So we do have one territory here in Australia, which is ironic where you're allowed to home grow.
Okay.
It's actually where our federal government sits.
Okay.
So the irony of this isn't missed on any of us growers, that you can cultivate 2 plants per person, up to 4.
Okay.
Cannot grow indoors. They consider that enhanced cultivation here in Australia. So where there's a little bit of misinformation around hydroponic growing and the ingredients in which and the equipment is used, that then they consider grows high potency cannabis, which causes psychosis.
Supercharged weed.
It's really difficult to kind of like shake that part of the stigma out of our government and lawmakers, that, I could be running an outdoor crop and pushing THC percentages just as much as I can, indoors, to genetic dependent as well. And like what I'm doing with my plants. So the fact that that can happen, they can have up to 50 grams of dried flower as possession and 150 grams of fresh flower, which is an interesting kind of
written by people who don't understand weed math.
Yeah, hence why they also aren't allowed. They're allowed to cultivate, but they're not allowed to access seeds. So I'm like, at some point, we're missing some real big key indicators, and there are non-cannabis people creating these policies.
The Immaculate Conception Rule.
What's that? Sorry?
The Immaculate Conception Rule, that cannabis just appears and somehow it's a plant.
Just, the stalk dropped it off.
So most of it's from seed then? Like, it sounds like most of the growing then, or no, would you say clones?
However they're being able to access it, it's all from underground black market. Okay. And there's only 2 hydroponic stores in that whole territory. So they're very busy stores. It might be actually worth chatting to one of those guys on the podcast, because they live in a very different world than the rest of Australia does. But for the rest of us, it's technically completely illegal. But I always say, grow your 1 to 4, be self-sustainable, enjoy the hobby. Like, we all accept the risk we're willing to take.
Yeah.
So know your plant count, know your laws, depending on what state you're in. But yeah, ACT, sure, they've been doing it for about 5-6 years, and they sure have shown that there was no
ACT,
Australian Capital Territory.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where they've got their home cultivation, and it is essentially like no increase in hospital admissions. So the fear campaign was around, increasing psychosis. This is Australia-wide, but also access for young people, that would increase. We would see, more accidents on the road due to people just, smoking weed all day and getting behind the wheel of a car, and there'd be criminal syndicates tapping into the market because it's available, and all of that has been debunked. I think there was 12 people that were arrested for cultivating outside of their plant count. So there's just like billions of dollars and thousands of hours wasted on policing and criminalizing home cultivation here in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate story that rings true even in legal places. It's you should be able to grow the plant. I feel like legalization as a whole if you can't grow it, then it's not really that legal. But it's the growers that are willing to take the risks that keep the plant alive and keep the community going. So on that note, like, I would imagine, are home grower meetups like a thing? Like, or is that sort of like a self-incriminating, we all got in the same place kind of thing? Like,
yeah, that happens at the hydro stores in like hours or after hours. I was, very community minded. I wanted to bring together the people that needed to come together and have these conversations. And even just from the aspect of majority of home growers and majority of black market growers are men, and they're aged between, 20 and 45 up to 65. And being able to be in a safe environment where they could just talk about their passion outside of all the other roles that they play in life. And, brothers and men and women, but like mostly the men getting together and having that banter and that rapport. And that was amazing to be able to facilitate a space where I'm like, go for it, guys. Feel safe. We'll lock the front gate after 1 o'clock on a Saturday and let's put on some tunes. Let's roll up and let's do a bit of trading and look at what each other's got. And
Yeah.
but for the most part, like, there are some consumption spaces that have started to pop up,
Okay.
where patients and community can come together. But for the most part, as far as like, breeders and growers and, hash makers, washers coming together and having a safe hub, not so much, and it also actually perpetuates the divide within our community. The growers here in New South Wales versus the growers down in the state of Victoria and like down in Tasmania. And it's only now that we can kind of ride the back of medical kind of legalization that we can at least come together to consume.
Yeah.
What you then decide to chat about between those that you trust is up to you. But yeah, unfortunately, that isn't prevalent and it's not something that happens widely, but we're working on it. That's something, it's a project I've got in the works at the moment.
I love to hear that. And it's funny that you say, it's something that I'm working to actually do better about with season 2. There is a massive imbalance between the men and women in the cultivation side, but in the US, I think we are seeing a lot more women taking a hold of it. And to Australia's testament, when I posted that I was looking to speak to international and women growers, multiple women from Australia were recommended. So whether that's from your charge or just people that you've bumped into along the way, how has that been, how has that evolved over the time? Like you said, giving people a safe space, but also interacting with other women growers and encouraging that movement.
Oh, it's been beautiful. It's almost like we've found this special section of a sisterhood that we have been able to come together and see one another and recognize that for those of us that have this kind of very deep spiritual connection to the plants, whether that's cultivating the plant, consuming it, or caring for those that need access for it, or just championing and being a voice to, it's a slow roll. It's because it is still quite illegal in, the legacy black market side of things. It's mostly been a lot of the legal medicinal cannabis women that have been able to talk a little bit more freely. To be honest, I'm the only legacy girl out there kind of
Banging the
championing
drum.
banging the drums for sure. But I think as women, when we align with one another, we see it's greater than black market versus medical. This is coming back to our own roots and our ancestry as women, as medicine women, caring for community, caring for Mother Nature, cultivating energy that brings healing. And that's what I've found has been really beautiful. And while not all women get along, like all men don't, we can kind of see the greater good of what this is all about. And that's been amazing. And I know you've spoken to Melanie Wenzel, the author of Cannabis Queens, who got together such beautiful stories of women all over the world, of our experiences and our knowledge and our pursuit and advocation of the plant. And it just shows what I'm doing here versus what's happening in Thailand, what's happening in the US and North America and in the Asian countries. It's no different. We are not too disalike, all of us. So
This plant brings us all together.
yeah, but being a woman in this industry, I've had an amazing experience. I'm also like a bit of a no bullshit person, so I dare you to try your luck. But
Yeah. Well, you got to have a certain amount of that.
yeah, you do. And, yeah, working on the hydro shop floor for 9 years with every type of grower you could ever imagine kind of conditions you for, realizing that we're all here for a very common goal for the most part. but how we move and how we treat one another and our consciousness around this plant, like it does matter. So let's keep the conversations, whether they can be polarizing or spicy, or we sit on complete opposite sides of the spectrum. The fact that the conversations can happen here, we're definitely pushing against the norm here in Australia. Like a lot of us are being shadow banned and having content taken off. And I know it's very similar in other parts of the world.
That happens on this side of the planet too.
Yeah. Like I just did my first Discord podcast the other night for 2.5 hours. And they were like, look, it's pretty much free here. We can kind of say and do what we want. And I went, amazing, because the generic platforms in which most people are consuming their content from aren't, they aren't happy to have us have these conversations. But
yeah, and we have to mince words or, speak in code or do some sort of fun emoji in the middle of it or something.
Leaves.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't make it easier. I have a Discord as well, which I will happily send you an invite to. But feel free to, everywhere I go, everywhere I travel, I try to add at least one grower to the mix because, like you said, it's access to information is how this all happens. Like as a hydro store, you gave growers access to information. As growers, you give consumers access to information, so on and so forth. Like the better the information, the better the weed, like across the board. So
knowledge is power. And when we look at the last at least my last 10 years in the grow world, so much has changed. We have so much more information available to us. There are trials being done overseas. There are scientists and there are some of the best heads in the world diving into this. So I love that I can, I just love to consume information. I'm forever a student, right? There's always something to learn, and what fits one person might not fit the other style. So to be able to bring a breadth of it to the people, and then they can implement it themselves and, enjoy their grow or produce better quality, or then pass it on to another person that doesn't have to, go through the coals of, working out like, should I be doing this, or like what light should I be using in this space? And it's like we have this data now available. When it comes to like irrigating, I found that was a really pinnacle kind of moment in the grow world, looking at different irrigation styles and the flushing conversations and under canopy and LED versus HID, like all those conversations that weren't necessarily happening 10 years ago. There was like 4 main products. Canna was the only nutrients being used. HBS was it. Australia, which I don't know if many of the world knows this as well, but Australia, I think is one of the only places that in the home grow market that PGRs are used here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was ingrained from like early days of like just making more weight happen. Like who cares about the resin and all of that. And obviously that comes from a place of like why that person is cultivating. And that did come down to, a lot of, motorcycling, kind of, just doing it for the money. And then as more information has come our way, so has the knowledge, and knowledge is power. We have cleaner products now. We understand that we don't want PGRs. We don't want carcinogenics. We don't want to be playing and combusting plant material like that. Like, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I shudder to think about all the various chemicals that I consumed smoking black market weed in Missouri. It's an unfortunate situation to think about, but it's an interesting conversation at the same time, because like when I went to Amsterdam and none of the product is regulated. I mean, now they are testing out a regulated market, but the coffee shops are largely unregulated. They're largely tolerated, I would say. Yeah. And so you are taking a gamble with the product that you're consuming, and you're hoping that the cultivator or the club or the coffee shop has taken their due diligence, but you're also sort of just trusting it the same way you did when you bought an eighth at a truck stop in the middle of Missouri and it was illegal. So, and I compared that to like the Texas market or the Spanish market. When you're playing in this space, there's a lot of criticism of like, you don't know what's been sprayed on that product and you don't know what it's been grown with. And that's true. But like, that was the baseline. You never knew. Most of us didn't have access to a direct grower that we could watch and see what they were up to. So,
And we trusted that like what they told us was actually what was happening as well. They can
Yeah.
spin anything to you just to sell the product as
Well,
well.
and now we know like there's so much more access to the harmful information. You know, like what is Eagle 20 actually doing to the buds that we're all consuming, and what's being concentrated in extracts and things like that. So, you know, we're seeing a lot of that here. Pesticides that pass on the raw material when they're concentrated end up, you know, over the limit.
Yeah, certainly. And it's something that here in Australia in our medical industry that they don't test for PGRs in the initial panel testing, which is something that is a conversation that is starting to happen because there was some tests coming through positive from just third sources testing it, not necessarily the pathway for the legal, but where PGRs were being present from cannabis being imported from other places in the world. So now one of my goals for this year as well is to highlight mostly to the brands importing that, yeah, it does cost a little bit extra to get that PGR testing, but I'd love to see that on your label of that product so that you can confirm and we can see who the good players are that want to make sure that the medicine coming through in the legal market is clean. So that's just growing pains here in Australia to work out what we should be looking at and what we should probably kind of dial back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, you know, it's a reason I think a lot of people in a legal market choose to grow. The people who choose to grow, they see what's going on in the legal market, and you know, you can both respect the efforts that are happening and also still be personally concerned with what you're consuming. You know, I think that they're not mutually exclusive, to want the industry to succeed, but also to not want to consume some of the product that's produced on the market. So,
Sure.
you know, as a home grower, I think that's, you know, that's your first line of defense, you know, as a consumer, is knowing what the plant went through from start to finish. So,
Exactly. And that becomes a really big contention point for our black market community. It's one of the reasons why they have so much disdain for the medical world. They're essentially saying, you know, I can't grow my own clean medicine that I wish to extract or consume or give to my, you know, mum or dad. Yet I can very easily, within, 15 minutes on a phone call, get a script for something that does have PGRs in it and that hasn't been tested for it. And it's just that lack of, autonomy as an adult to be able to decide in which we would like to consume and in which way. So there's a lot of unhappy home growers, and I
well,
get it. I
and
so
there's
get
a
it.
lot of bro science that we are getting over, you know, this anecdotal, like, oh, if you throw this in your plant, it's gonna, you know, it'll make the flowers turn yellow or whatever. You know, it's, yeah, it might, but at what expense? And you know, what is it doing to the end user? And from whether it's just a harsh smoke or whether it's actually harmful for you, you know, it's interesting because I live in a place like Colorado. I'm very blessed to have legal access, and when I talk to other people, you know, in markets that are less regulated or outright illegal, you know, it's not just like, well, what kind of weed is that? What does it taste like? It's like, do you have weed or not? And the conversation is that simple. You know, we're here. Like I talk to growers in states like Georgia or North Carolina or some of these more illegal markets. They're looking for specific effects, or they're looking for specific relief from what it may be. And in like Colorado, we're pheno hunting for peaches, and we're looking for, you know, we're looking for pixie stick terps, and while does it wash, and you know, can we make rosin out of it? Like it's such a different conversation, beyond just that initial, like, what does it have the desired effect? Is it helping me in that way?
Yeah, I definitely can say it's the opposite here. That's a smaller percentage of people having that conversation here, versus like, hey, do you just have some weed? Like we're just lucky
Yeah.
to be able to get on sometimes.
Is it smokable? Does it have seeds? Awesome. Let's
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
And look, there is also this funny culture in Australia where like we haven't had the greatest quality for like quite a few decades, albeit there are some great growers for sure. But like for the majority, like a lot come from, illegal criminal syndicates. The Vietnamese have a really big, stronghold over here on the illicit market as well. It's not that great a quality. So it's almost like, just that's what they've become used to. So now as the conversation matures, and like you said before, we've got Instagram, we've got LinkedIn, we've got websites and podcasts and all these amazing pieces of content and information to be able to educate ourselves here, and like going into hydro stores and having these more, top level conversations besides like, oh man, this bud just hits and I want to know a whole bunch about it. But they're like, oh, really? Like, just enjoy the weed. And that's where it's like, oh, okay, a little bit different, you and I, but yeah.
I can see that. Well, as we sort of wrap things up, let's get into some rapid fire questions here. And I'm going to adapt some of these based on our conversation so that we don't get into too much trouble. But what was the first grow setup that you remember seeing? Like the first time you were introduced to somebody, not just, throwing a plant and it was a weed, but like actually trying.
Yeah. So not being outdoor, it was definitely indoor. So it was a 4x8 with, I think it had like 4 HPS, like bat wings in there, and just cocoa perlite being run in probably like 18-liter pots with like bamboo sticks. We're running Girl Scout cookies and some money maker and like train wreck, like some really old school stuff that was then being like ducted out into a lounge room that also had like a 4x4 double stacked tier for veg.
Oh, wow.
And then like, yeah, just like another little 2 4x4s for drying and curing. And yeah, that was my first experience kind of walking in and being like, okay, like this isn't an outdoor cultivation.
This was built with
feels
intention.
very illegal.
Yes, this was like somebody was intended. They were like, we're going to do this the right way.
Yeah, for sure. And just, being able to like constantly visit that place because I was helping at the time and just mixing newts and just with plant training and trimming and all that, cleaning. That was really cool. And then being able to consume it on the other side, knowing it was clean, beautifully grown, pesticide free, like that moment when I was 22, so that's 13 years ago, was just eye-opening. And then I've seen everything in between since then. But
okay, so taking us now to like what's either the most advanced or most impressive sort of facility you've seen recently?
Oh, advanced and impressive. Look, I love my Aussie guys. So we do have the Simra farm up in Byron. I love that they're a licensed cultivator. I'd love to see more, underground grows, but unfortunately,
touring underground grows is a little hard.
Whether I make it out alive, who knows? So these are going to be licensed ones, but yeah, like Simra, what they're doing up in Byron in their greenhouses, like they do have some supplemental lighting, but like what their pheno hunting is doing, their mother library, their team, the companion planting, like the way their dehues are set out, like it just has so much soul. And I can't remember the square footage, unfortunately, but they have a really decent plant count in there, and they also have a GMP kind of harvesting and apologies. They're building a GMP facility so that they don't have to essentially harvest and send it off to a third party, so that it's packaged.
Okay.
So that'll be really cool to see when they're doing that. And they've got a tissue culture lab there as well, who are run by the ladies. So Alison, Jess and Jamili over there are just absolute queens of the industry. And I learned so much because TC isn't my expert. Like we only just had, the Athena TC products come to our hobby market maybe like 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I just think due to the more advanced nature it can seem, to some it wasn't quite adopted, across the majority of growers. But to see that in like lab scale was really cool.
I bet.
But I'm not gonna lie, Thailand, man.
Yeah.
Far out. That I went to Thai Stick facility over there. They're also in the stage of expansion and about to have solar power that that runs like 90% of their electricity costs. They are also a greenhouse with supplemental lighting, so hybrid style. They've just switched from rock wool over to cocoa, so their new head grower there has definitely got some, work ahead of him. But that facility from the get-go has been engineered and built with money behind it, like no expense was spared.
Oh, wow.
Such a beautiful facility. If you're ever in Thailand, they're now opening up for public tours, so you can book in and go and see the facility. But essentially they have, I'm just trying to think back because I've seen so many facilities now. Yeah, you walk in, they've got their beautiful mother room. You can't go into the mother room, but you can go into their vegging room, of course. And I think they were running at that point 6 different cultivars. Once again, like they've got, I wish I kind of researched their light count, but like they're well over like 1,200 lights.
It's insane what they've been allowed to do. I mean, and I say allowed loosely, like it was sort of, we're just going to look the other way and hope this all works out as how they legalized. But the people who are doing it right, I mean, there was like you mentioned, it's a lot easier to be a home grower or a smaller time grower and go to market in a place like Thailand.
Yeah, definitely. Although that has changed in the last year. They have brought in, and it's about to change once again. They're about to go to an election in Thailand where I'm not too deep on the Thailand politics, but essentially the gentleman that was acting as like their health minister that kind of got cannabis over the line, they did it. And then they've now rolled it back to, at least with the dispensaries, you're meant to have a medical prescription, which look, it's very easy. You just walk in, there's some paper with the doctor's signature on the bottom already pre-filled. And I guess it's just up to you as an adult to realize, does cannabis work for me? And if it does, know that you're safe. But GMP, so good manufacturing processes, are being implemented so that anything actually being exported from Thailand has to meet these essentially international standards, which is exactly, we want that. What's happening in their local market, of course, is a different story. It's much easier for a home grower or like a home washer and a small scale cultivator like up in the mountains to be able to facilitate that local dispensary, which I love. I think that's amazing. And then be able to source the best from other grows in Thailand. But yeah, Thai Stick was just, and their flower room and like just the way that they trim, like they've got like 30 people in there just like meticulously trimming like with tweezers. It's just like, obviously their labor is way less expensive than it is over here, and it is in other places, so they can afford to make a really good living as Thai locals as well in a beautiful air conditioned clean environment. Like it's tough over there for the Thai locals, and they really love the cannabis industry and the opportunities it affords their local communities and their micro communities, and the way that it's highlighted the historical and cultural significance and how embedded it is in Thai culture. But I do have to give a shout out to Jordan and Alan and Jed over at Hidden Valley Genetics. They're a bunch of Cali guys that are over there. They're breeders, growers, and a hydro store all in one space, which just was like my dream come true.
Yeah, I had a buddy move out there and did something similar. Like they just stack these, you're like, those are all my favorite things. They're like, cool, same building.
Literally. And it's just so easy to do. And those guys do a lot with like helping the Thai government understand what like kind of shouldn't happen, helping with regulation, making sure that clean, consistent quality is upholding the Thai standards in which they really want to be known for. Because I don't know about the sentiment that other places hold around the world, but I know here in Australia, people are like, oh, like it's untested, it's unregulated, it's crap quality, they don't have good genetics. But I walked into the best of the best, and I know not all of them are like that.
Yeah.
Seen some of the dodgy stuff that I go, I probably wouldn't want to consume that flower. Very picky, but for the most part, there are some really amazing growers. The hash scene over there,
albeit
it's crazy. Illegal though.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do dabs and concentrates. So
Hasn't stopped them.
it stop them, because like, who's coming for you? You know what I mean? You're facilitating the local community. Yes, you're not exporting to other legal countries, but I don't know. I've considered moving over there to grow and wash and just live my best life.
I had a buddy move out there 3 weeks after they legalized and was
Yeah.
trying to convince everyone that would listen, pack your bags and head over here. And, like you said, they've gone through some roller coasters of emotions of, we're going to roll all this back, and being an American in a foreign country in Asia, working in weed, if it went illegal again, would be not a great thing, I would imagine, but, or any expat for that matter.
Yeah, but it is such a multicultural hub. Being at the Asia Hemp Expo and meeting some of my favorite like legacy growers from the US that I've followed for like 20 years that came from the underground, to see them, cultivating and exporting and opening dispensaries and bringing other people like in and up.
Yeah.
Was just, it's kind of the nirvana of cannabis community and world. Like, let us do what we can, and do it right, and we'll show it can happen. But there's a flip side to it, where there's a lot of there's a lot of social and political issues as well in Thailand that affect it. There's a lot being exported from the legal, GMP facilities into black markets, and that's very commonly known as well. So, they've got their challenges, but I'm back there in a month and a half, and I'm really looking forward to just sinking my teeth even further and getting into some of the unfortunately, it's not outdoor grow season. It'll be like, peak summer, and it's just like rains and monsoons and pours.
Yeah.
But to hit up some of the other amazing breeders and cultivators I met at the expo, and they're like, please come back and just experience it all. And the community, it's so welcoming. Like, the carts on the streets are no longer there. And like you were saying before, when you don't know how it's been grown or what's on it, you've got every tourist kind of just purchasing some probably very unclean flower off a side cart in Bangkok. But also, in saying that, there's a lot of great local community farmers doing really great, and they kind of get lumped into that mix. So be interesting to watch how that happens out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like when we were in Spain and Amsterdam and, some of these other places, like in Spain, it was very easy to find outdoor grown, lightly brown weed for very, €5 for an eighth or whatever it was. But then there was absolutely living soil, organically grown, regenerative farming, high end. You had to stumble upon it or find the right person. So, on that note, from a grower's perspective, are you more of a wet or a dry trimmer? What do you prefer?
Well, I guess it depends what I'm using it for.
Okay.
But like, I love to kind of defol first, and then if I can, like, whole plant hang, or at least separate. But using trimmers over here, manual trimmers and like twisters and centurions, are still quite common. Obviously, they have like a wet versus dry function as well on most of them. But I'm a more
Hand
of a
trim.
finesse early, and then get in there later on when it's a bit drier.
I love it. Salts or organics?
Look, I love organics. I have grown mostly salts though.
Yeah. Well,
And that's mostly due to the challenges that, look, it is obviously possible, but the challenges that growing organics indoors brings here in Australia.
Yeah.
And everywhere, but like, we can have such high temperature swings, and the implementations for pest and disease moving back and forth probably isn't introduced as much in Australia as it might be in other mature markets. But I see in Australia probably the outdoor organic guys moving more to having, yes, smokable flower, but for hash rosin.
Yeah.
And then the indoor guys on the salts and minerals probably producing smokable flower.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good distinction as well. Because I see that here also, like, it's why I am a salt grower. I do both, but I was a salt grower who swapped to doing organics for resin, for hash rosin. I have a theory as to part of it. Like I think that there people will tell you that there is a noticeable taste difference in all these different things. I do think that salts have the ability to push biomass a little bit harder. And
Sure.
and so from a, the way percentages work, if you all of a sudden have less biomass, your resin percentage goes up a little bit. So
Yeah.
sort of my theory, but I do think, sun grown, organic grown, like there's noticeable differences in some of these things. So, um,
Yeah.
seeds or clones?
Just for the like, I would prefer like clones if I am doing it myself or I'm trusting who it's coming from. But like, I love popping seeds and like picking out winners and
Yeah.
having like, I've got a pretty decent seed selection that I am keeping for the right day and that I know are performers as well that I've used in the past. But yeah, no, I love popping seeds.
I love that.
Yeah.
Find something that
Yeah.
nobody else has.
Yeah, exactly.
Flour or hash?
Well, I'm a heavy flour girl, but I'm dipping into the world of hash. It's has been somewhat hard to come by, but in the last 2 years, it's available in our medical market.
Okay.
Shout out to the mother plant guys that are bringing really beautiful solventless hash rosin to the medical market. There are others out there, but in particular, they're really great curators. So I love that. But we also have a very small handful of amazing legacy washers and makers, and they are doing some amazing stuff. Sometimes I can't afford it.
Yeah.
But I completely can appreciate that the first dab that I had out of a Puffco, I was floored. Not because, it hit me in the high, but the flavor was almost like, wow, how do you go back to flour after this?
Yeah. It's, I vary, like, just like you said, and I've been on a dab diet most of this year,
Oh,
occasionally
yeah.
smoking flower, but my wife's a flower girl and she's more of a flower smoker. And like you said, like you go hit a bowl after you've taken like a fresh, clean dab and it's like, wait, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But I love joints. I mean, like as a social smoker, not many people can smoke dabs the way that you socially smoke a joint or pass a bowl around. And so,
Correct.
that aspect is often missing unless you're a very heavy concentrate consumer.
Yes, and they certainly exist here. They're teaching me their ways. I'm like, guys, what glassware do I buy? We're not allowed to have Puffcos here in
Oh,
Australia.
wow. Okay. I was
Yeah,
wondering
so
because I've seen a couple pivots going for like five
yeah,
times what they go for here.
yes. So pretty much anything Puffco range, if you can get your hands on. There are a few pharmacists that I think are pushing the line and getting it to the patients because once again, this irony of being able to be prescribed hash rosin concentrates, but then not being able to have the device to consume it
Yeah.
is just wild. Although the TGA, which is our Therapeutic Goods Association, that essentially monitors what goes on in the medical realm here as far as like the clinics and prescribing and whatnot, they aligned with Stores and Bickle, rightly so. They're OGs and their goods are manufactured to a high quality, but all we're allowed to have is Volcano or the Mighty Medic Plus. So while
Okay.
you can use your concentrates, through your Volcano, it's not how I
It's not
choose to
quite the
do it. I
same.
like a low temp dab and just like a nice little rig. So yeah, just those little pain points that as we move forward, and we hope that they don't try to ban concentrates and high volume THC. It's not even high potency, but anything that has, under 2% CBD, they want to try and ban. So yeah, it's a really interesting moment to be a consumer. But if I had the budget and the ability, I'm a very busy mother and businesswoman as well. I'd be dabbing all day, but I love, a balanced flour for functioning when I've got to work. And I do love smoking and rolling a nice fat doink and using my vaporizer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just got my hands on some glass rigs that I'm going to have a play with and support some of our black market makers and get some pucks in my hand.
Very cool. I love to hear that. And it is funny, right? Like with the concentrate side of things, in many markets, an extract is easier to quantify, easier to measure, easier to dose, easier to administer for a patient. By all counts, it would make more sense to only have concentrates in a medical market. If you wanted to go on an extreme side.
With the doctor, they think it's crack, like crack cocaine. Like we're like heating up these.
You've purified it.
Yeah, concentrating things, and they're so worried about psychosis. They just think that concentrates is going to be the thing that pushes Australia over into psychosis, and it's just a very difficult mindset to shift, especially when we've got a lot of pharmaceutical lobbyists going against it. So, but you're right, precise dosing, cleaner, more flavorful. Sometimes the stigma of like
ash.
like can be enough for someone to not want to do it. So when we can see, they're not combusting biomass as well. So like there's a win.
Right.
But we've got a path to walk until that becomes acceptable, I think.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about genetics. I'm actually growing some Australian genetics right now. Gonna chop here shortly.
Growing.
Heavy Days is one of your all's Australian breeders. So buddy of mine gifted me a pack of his seeds right before he announced that he was gonna stop making seeds. So popped some licorice mamas, and I got one finishing up here in a few days. So excited about that.
Oh, how's it going?
It's going great.
What's it looking like?
She's looking more on the raspberry side. He gave me some insight that it's either going to lean kind of licorice or raspberry. Both are great, can't complain there. But it's a faster finisher. I'm letting her go longer than she probably needs because the rest of the tent's not quite caught up. But she was the first to kind of start turning, and definitely is ambering up nicely. So
nice.
But on that note, what are some genetics either you've had success with or you've had success recommending to other home growers, or, if you've got some Australian breeders that you just want to shout out for the rest of us that don't know anything about what's going on your side of the the planet?
Yeah, for sure. So like, I guess just, the illegality around sourcing seeds and getting seeds can make it difficult. I think for the most part, to generalize, people actually don't care what they're getting as long as they get seeds. And I know that sounds really sad because I wish we were able to have more of a selection process. And yes, like you just mentioned, Heavy Days. I don't know if I necessarily want to mention anyone else.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
In case they're like, don't do that on an international podcast.
Fair enough.
But there are IGs out there, and if anyone does want to know, please feel free to private message me. I'm on Signal as well, so like we can always have those conversations off air. But
he's pretty public about what he's up to, so I felt pretty safe mentioning him.
Yes, and I'm glad that we can give him the flowers that he deserves. He's been doing that for a really long time for our community and doing some really beautiful crosses and really stable genetics, and just they're really flourishing. Like every single grower, we've been able to access some of his genetics back in the past to give to our top tier growers that do really want to make sure that what they're getting is something either unique or it's been stabilized or it comes from not just like a white label overseas kind of
someone who actually made the seed.
Yeah, exactly. But I do know that it takes most of us to go to Cannabis or to MJ BizCon or
MJ Berlin or Thailand or
Thailand for sure. I was definitely able to bring Thailand race back. I'm happy I can say that myself, and gave it out to some breeders who I trust. And I'm like, I don't think anyone else in Australia has this. So feel free to please work on it. But like one of my the iconic was a haze cross, a Mullumbimby Madness. So there was a somewhat wild cannabis cultivar that back in the, I believe, 60s and 70s grew all through the region. I don't know if you're aware of like Nimbin and Mullumbimby. That's like
that sounds a little familiar.
Yeah, well, Nimbin's like our cannabis capital in
Okay.
Australia that still operates in New South Wales. In this state, it's illegal, but in 1970s they had an Aquarius festival, and all the artists and activists and alternative people stayed there and said, like, we're going to grow here, we're going to sell it in our hemp embassy, we're going to give it to the people whether you like it or not. And it's somewhat been which I love, and still to this day, I think it's been 20 years almost of having a Mardi Gras festival, our only cannabis festival here in Australia. And
Oh,
the
wow.
police, for the most part, just kind of let it happen and do roadside drug testing as you go in and out. But in saying all of that, a lot of genetics have been kept alive up there as well. And the Mullumbimby Madness Crosser Haze that one of our local breeders have done, we gave that to our outdoor guys. It was a very long flowering,
Huh.
but she loved the temperate zone here as well. And she just really, she washed really well. Really nice high resin count, and just was a really prolific grower. But I know that some of the exotic genetics seeds have been going around and being pheno hunted as well. So they love that, candy phenos. I'd like to see more of a resurgence of the old school genetics as well come through. Some of the old heads are enjoying, that the renaissance of the hash scene and, different flavor profiles. So we'll see that start to ramp up. But for the most part, everything's been run by Candy
Yeah,
here
it
in
seems to be the
Australia. But
trend.
yeah. But there's a few guys playing with some balance flowers that like grow for community, but for medical consumers, not patients through the medical realm. But it's been really nice to chat with them about trying to stabilize and get access to their balanced CBD THC genetics, so that we can offer something outside of just higher THC for medicinal use and therapeutic use.
Yeah, absolutely. And we didn't even touch on that, but can you grow hemp legally, or it's just any cannabis plant is a no?
Yeah, the poor hemp industry as well. I swear, like, we could have one of the most robust hemp industries in the world, and to a degree, with the minimal that we actually are allowed to do. So you need a license. It's a state license that's like federally approved, so that's great. It's still got to be under that 1% THC
Okay.
limit, otherwise your whole crop, is gone. That's actually being worked at the moment in legislation, especially down in Victoria, one of the other states here in Australia. There's Because we're so segregated, some of our legalized cannabis politicians and our Greens party obviously align with legalization, creating a better future, adult use, recreational, community hemp products as well, and more hemp cultivation. But unfortunately, there's a few really great players, but still, once again, not as prevalent as it
Pretty
should be.
throttled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in the face of that, what's keeping you excited about cannabis these days, or just cannabis growing as a whole?
Oh, I don't know. It all keeps me very excited because it's such a multifaceted industry that, because I don't sit necessarily just in a clinic, or I don't just sit as a grower or, as a brand. There's forever, legislation and advocacy around reform that needs to happen. That makes me really excited that, I guess, doing the platforms and the podcasts and, at the conferences and using this voice for the people, that I'm being heard and I'm being recognized. And that's not necessarily happened as much, especially for like a younger woman as well. There have been some really great advocates that have helped early days in the 2016 getting medical over the line here. But that makes me really excited that I'm at a space where, like, the stories and what I have to say on behalf of our people matter, and that I can have a role in, whether that be just 1%, the tiniest role in creating the change I want to see in my backyard, and speaking with the politicians and speaking with the people and the ones that make the the laws and the rules happen. That's really exciting to see that progress. We're starting to see, a medical defense for medicinal cannabis patients. We only have that in 2 states here in Australia. But to speak with the politicians and to, just have these like think tanks about, what we can do in our state here now is amazing. And also the representation of women in cannabis in Australia is amazing as well. And I'm really looking forward to us creating our girl gang of growers and consumers and caretakers, and being able to come together like in a physical setting instead of us, Zooming and being on the phone. And we're very lucky that our East Coast here, we can, it's only an hour north and an hour south, so we can build on what the medical legalization has allowed us, as far as we can come together and consume our prescribed medication and be in a safe place and be together. And what else is exciting me? Well, what was exciting before I left the hydro store was the introduction of Under Canopy. Like I was absolutely, that was my kind of, last mark on the hydro industry. They've been trying to get a few of them across the line for a bit, and like no one gave a shit about it, to be honest, 3 years ago. I then linked up with Lance from Craft Farmer, and just because we ran Athena and like we just had like mutual contacts, and I was like, dude, like we need to get some better, like higher quality under canopy lights, and aren't just like really crappy Chinese made plastic coated like that. It's just not great. So that was really exciting to see the growers just, it's a new toy to play with.
Yeah.
And what was possible. And, because once you kind of get it dialed in, right, environment can change and genetics can change, but for the most part, for some it can get a bit mundane, right? They got to switch it up. So like Under Canopy was just amazing. That's really exciting to still see people like push against it, that I'm like, oh, you're crazy. But
I have not converted yet to it. I
really?
see. Yeah. It's such an interesting conversation, but it's like total light, right? As if it's all coming from the top versus coming up from the bottom versus efficiency versus like in what setting isn't necessary. So like I see a lot of value to something like that, or playing with sort of those advanced variables. If you have large plants, if you have large lights, if you like, and if you're in a 4x4 by 6 with one light, I don't know how much the under canopy is going to do for you. But if you were in a room with like a 12 light setup, like I think that and maybe you have 14-foot tall ceilings, like maybe you would see a ton of benefit from that.
Yeah. Well, look, that's true. I guess having 14-foot ceilings in a legacy market here is like unheard of for the most part. But there are definitely guys like running, like there's definitely guys running a 4x4 that just wanted one under canopy in there. God love them. They wanted to play, and that's fine. But for the most part, those that have implemented it, and they are into like a 6 to 8 light, so less than what you were thinking would be a starting point for sure.
Yeah.
They're reaping the benefits, just even from like finishing earlier, less defoling, obviously due to like not
more
being
even
able
finish. Yeah.
Yeah, and like not having large plants, just with their scrogging and so there's definitely been a resurgence of joy and new learning when the under canopies came in. But yeah, there's so much. I'm excited to go back to Thailand and just check out more grows, and hopefully get over to India and check out some land race stuff over there.
Very cool.
The Indians love their cannabis, man. Like they just have absolutely just influxed my inbox from that Thailand trip. And like seeing pictures of their hash and their flower and chillums, and like learning about their historical significance as well. Like it's just a forever learning process. So
there's so
many things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's something I love about the plant. Like it's something I've said is that it gives me something to be excited about every day, whether that's looking forward to something or learning about something or a new skill that I have to learn because I flooded the basement, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, where if people have enjoyed listening to you and want to hear more about what you're working on and keep up with you, where can people find you? Where can they maybe not meet up with you, but what if you're open the floor to plug yourself, plug your people, however you want to direct people to you.
Sure. So I guess for like a professional industry setting, LinkedIn is always great. Just Jessica Peros there at the Green Room HQ. So that's where like a lot of the projects, a lot of quality control in the legal market, farm tours come about through there, just conversating. For social media, Instagram is thegreenroom.hq. That's where a lot of the storytelling, the visual content, the everyday grow chat happens. There's another Instagram channel as well, jessica.inherbloom. And that's more based around just, a bit of a behind the scenes of my life being a mother and woman working with and for the cannabis plant as well. And just breaking stigma around what a mother who uses cannabis looks like and functions like, and really creating a space where like-minded women and mothers can get together there. My TikTok's been taken down, so don't go see me there anymore, although that was pumping. And yeah, YouTube Shorts as well. I'm a bit behind on the uploading of all the videos there, but once Instagram kind of tried to shadow ban me on my farm tours, we moved some of it over there, so you can check that out as well. And currently working in Hemstore Australia here on the Central Coast. So I'm there a couple of days a week talking all things hemp and cannabis and wellness and getting medicine to the people. So if you're in the Central Coast region of New South Wales, check out Hemstore Australia and come and visit me. And, we can... I like bringing like-minded people together, and there's great spaces we can go and smoke up and conversate and just be together as a community. So yeah, find me there, guys.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for your time. I couldn't be more grateful for you sharing your experience from across the pond, and hope to hear more from you in the future.
Thank you, Ben. It's been a real honor. I've followed your journey for a couple of years and have always been, somewhat jealous, being like, oh man, I wish I could play in the garden like he gets to. But it's a really great source of information. I've been able to pass on a lot of your content that you put through to our growers, and just a great knowledge is power, learning material, and getting the community together and empowering each other. So thank you, Ben.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing the word and spreading it forward.
Anytime.
That's it for now. New episodes drop weekly to inspire your hobby. Hit subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend. And as always, I'm your host, Ben Owens, and we'll see you next time.